So if you've ever taken an economics course, which I assume you have, or done some basic research on it, the demand and supply has been discussed ad nauseum. We've been through it, so this is really just going to be a very basic overview of it. So first, when we look at the demand curve, one of the things that gets talked about in some books, but not all of them, is the diamond's water paradox. And this is just kind of a way of looking at explaining demand curves and why they are downward sloping. And so if we look at an example here, so you have demand for water and demand for diamonds. Now with water, you get a lot of benefit from it. You don't have water, you get sick, you can die, you need water. Okay. Diamonds, however, you don't get a lot of total benefit from it. If you have a diamond, you may get some, it might be nice, but compared to water, you don't get nearly as much benefit. But then when you look at that, you pay a little amount for water and a high amount for diamonds. Well, why is that? The reason has to do with the quantity. And so the idea is with water, we buy a lot of it. We have a lot of water in our lifetime. And so because of that, the quantity is high of how much we purchase. So with that high amount, because we buy so much, because water is good for us, the total benefit that we get from water is high. However, the marginal benefit is low. Now, just as a refresher, marginal benefit is the additional benefit of an additional unit. And so if you went out and bought a bottle of water, the total benefit that you would get from it, from that bottle of water, or the marginal benefit of that bottle of water, isn't going to be that high. You're not going to be that much better off for it. But those small amounts, they keep adding up. But at the same time, because you don't get that much additional benefit from it, you're not going to be willing to pay that much for a bottle of water. So with water, the quantity is large. So you get a lot of benefit. But the marginal benefit is low. Okay. Diamonds, however, the quantity is low. For the most part, you do not buy a lot of diamonds in your lifetime. Okay. Most guys, they like to think they buy one, or they're going to buy one, but then it goes from, oh, look at that, there's a nice diamond, I want you to buy that for me and propose. Okay, there's one. But then there's, oh, look at that, there's the wedding band that goes with it. That is diamonds too. That matches really good. Let's get that. So, guys, women, they get some benefit from diamonds, but the total benefit is relatively low. Because, and again, part of it is because the quantity is low. However, the price, the amount people are willing to pay for diamonds is high. The reason why is because the marginal benefit is high. So the basic idea is the greater the quantity of something you get, the lower the marginal benefit becomes. Each additional unit gives you less and less additional benefit to it. And because of that, you're not willing to pay as much. So that's just kind of the diamond's water's paradox. Now, when we look at demand, there are three conditions that need to be met to be included in demand. You need to want the good. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to like it, but you need to want it. You need to be able to afford it, and you need to have a plan to buy it. So what that means is to be included in demand, if the price of the good is that, you're going to buy it. Okay, it's not, I want it, but at that price, I don't really want to pay that much for it. Now, when it comes down to it, it really comes that's really leads to this downward sloping demand. Okay. So want, be able to afford, and have a plan to buy. Now, if we look at the demand for anything in general, but healthcare related, let's say a liver, okay, liver transfer or liver transplant. So at high prices of a transplant or anything else, the quantity is going to be low. Quantity demand is going to be low. People aren't going to want, be able to afford, and not many people are going to want, be able to afford, and have a plan to buy the good. But as the price goes down, then more people are going to be pulled in. More people are going to be able to afford and want it at those prices. And so as price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. More people are willing and able to pay more for it. Now, we talked a little bit with the diamond water paradox, but margin analysis is important. Right? Marginal analysis is important. And the reason why is because we make our decisions at the margin, not necessarily the average. So when it comes to healthcare, though, at least on a policy-making decision, we look at the average. And so that can be a problem when we do that. The idea of ceteris paribus, basically all else constant, we say that, this is the demand as long as nothing else that affects demand changes. But as we know, things do. Demands can be individual, firm, markets. You've been through that in your courses. Okay. So that's demand. Again, if you need a refresher, there's plenty of stuff online. In some of my basic course, some of my principal courses, I have a couple of videos up for that, so feel free to check that out. With the supply curve, supply is everybody who is willing and able to produce and sell healthcare products. All right, healthcare services. So supply is everyone who is willing and able to sell. The supply could either be one seller in the case of a pharmacy in an isolated town, or supply could be multiple sellers. For example, pharmacies in Philadelphia. Now, when it comes to supply, right, businesses are willing and able to sell as long as they can profit from it. Now, just as with the demand, we're looking from a marginal benefit standpoint, supply looks at it from a marginal cost. And marginal cost is the additional unit or the additional cost of providing an additional unit of healthcare. And how they profit by that is if the marginal revenue, which is the additional revenue they get from that producing that unit, is greater than the marginal cost. So that's really supply. There's not really too much added to go into it here. So when we look, the other thing we look at when we look at demand supply is sensitivity. And with that we look at elasticity. Price elasticity shows how sensitive is quantity demanded to a change in the price. And the equation is given here. But in general, it's, if price changes by X amount, what does the quantity demanded change by? Now, this relates to marginal revenue. And so if we look over here, let me bring this up here. So how elastic, the more elastic demand is, the more sensitive that demand is to price changes. So let's look at a couple examples here. So colors. So here let's say we have elastic demand, where demand is very sensitive to price changes. And in 3 cases we're looking where price goes down. So we're saying price goes from 10 to 5. So if it's elastic, we're saying that the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1. All right, the effect on quantity is greater than the effect on price. And so if we look at this, when the elasticity goes from, when the price goes from 10 to 5, right? Actually, let me do it. Let's do blue here. So when the price was 10, here's our revenue, which is the price times the quantity. And when it goes to 5, this box down here is our total revenue. And so if we look at this, here's our before, here's our after. So when the price went from $10 to $5, this revenue in here was lost. Why was it lost? Well, because the amount that the firm was making, so these units are still being sold, but now instead of getting $10, the firm is getting $5. All right, so that's being lost. But what's being gained? What's being gained is this amount in here. Because yes, they're only receiving $5, but now they're receiving all these extra units in there. So when you have elastic demand, by reducing the price, right, because people are very sensitive to that price change, you may lose revenue on the units that you're still selling, but because the demand's elastic, you're going to bring in a lot more people to sell it, that are going to buy it. And so with elastic demand, because this box here is greater than this one, what you gain in revenue is greater than what you lost. And so when you have elastic demand and you lower the price, your revenue is going to go up. Now if we look over to inelastic demand, now because the people are not very sensitive to price changes, when you lower that price, you're not going to get that many more customers. All right, it's inelastic demand. And so while that's what you gain, what you're losing is everything up in here. All right. Now, in this case, because you have elastic demand, because people are not very sensitive to price changes, as you lower the price, you're going to make less money on the units you're selling, and you're not going to gain that much more business. So your total revenue is going to go down. And with unit elastic, it's a 1-to-1 percentage change-wise, and so there's no change in revenue from that. And so when it comes to healthcare in general is inelastic. As the price goes up, quantity's not changed by that much.